While modern fishermen struggle to catch a few fish with expensive gear, medieval communities could harvest thousands using only sticks, stones, and plants. They built massive underwater fish-trapping cities, turned darkness into their greatest weapon, and even weaponized plants to harvest entire rivers. These 5 genius techniques could feed hundreds for months using nothing but materials they could find, make, or grow themselves. WEIR. Fishing. Medieval communities didn't just catch fish, they built massive underwater cities designed to trap thousands of fish with every tide cycle. WEIR fishing represented medieval engineering at its most ambitious, creating permanent fishing installations that could feed entire regions without daily maintenance. Archaeological evidence from the Blackwater estuary in Essex reveals the staggering scale of medieval weir systems, over 13,000 timber posts arranged in complex patterns stretching half a mile into the sea. These weren't simple fences. They were sophisticated fish-directing systems that had been refined through centuries of experimentation and represented some of the largest construction projects of their era. The engineering principles behind weir fishing demonstrated remarkable understanding of fish behavior and water dynamics. Medieval builders positioned these structures in tidal estuaries and river mouths, where migrating fish naturally traveled, then used the fish's own instincts against them. Rather than trying to catch fish randomly, weirs created predictable gathering points where communities could harvest fish with minimal effort. Construction required enormous community investment and cooperation. Building a single weir system demanded hundreds of workers, thousands of wooden posts, and months of coordinated effort. Communities had to organize timber harvesting, post sharpening, transportation to construction sites, and synchronized installation during specific tidal conditions. This represented medieval project management at its most complex. The wooden framework created a funnel system that guided fish toward increasingly narrow passages. As fish followed what appeared to be natural underwater channels, they found themselves directed into woven wicker collection areas where escape became impossible. The genius lay in making the trap feel like a natural path rather than an obvious barrier. Different weir designs targeted specific fish species and seasonal patterns. Salmon weirs operated differently from eel weirs, which required different approaches than general-purpose fish traps. Medieval communities developed specialized knowledge about which fish species could be caught when, allowing them to modify their weir configurations throughout the year for maximum effectiveness. Maintenance demanded constant attention and seasonal rebuilding. Winter storms, flooding, and normal wear required weir operators to replace damaged sections, clear debris, and rebuild entire sections. This created year-round employment for specialized weir-wrights, who possessed the technical knowledge necessary to maintain these complex systems. The productivity of successful weir systems was legendary. Historical records describe single weir operations producing thousands of fish during peak migration periods, providing enough protein to sustain large communities through entire seasons. These installations represented medieval industrial fishing at its most efficient. Legal frameworks developed around weir ownership and operation rights. Because successful weirs could control entire river systems, medieval laws strictly regulated who could build them, where they could be constructed, and how they should be operated. Weir rights became valuable property that could be inherited, sold, or disputed in medieval courts. Economic impact extended far beyond simple fish production. Successful weir operations supported entire industries: boat building, net making, fish processing, salt production for preservation, and transportation networks to distribute catch to inland communities. A single productive weir could anchor the economy of an entire region. Modern fisheries management still studies medieval weir systems for insights into sustainable fish harvesting. These installations worked with natural fish migration patterns rather than against them, often increasing fish populations through controlled harvesting that prevented overcrowding and disease outbreaks in fish populations. Torch spearing. When darkness fell over medieval waters, most fishermen returned to shore, but the most successful hunters were just beginning their work. Torch spearing, known as lestring in Norwegian and lystring in English, transformed night into the medieval fisherman's greatest advantage, utilizing fish behavior that daylight fishing could never exploit. The technique relied on a fundamental understanding of fish vision and behavior that modern science has confirmed. Fish become temporarily blinded and disoriented when exposed to bright light in dark water. Medieval fishermen discovered this weakness and built an entire hunting system around exploiting it, turning their prey's own nervous system against them. Equipment was remarkably simple yet effective. The fishing spear featured multiple barbed prongs designed to prevent fish from sliding off after being struck. Unlike modern harpoons, medieval lysters used 3 to 5 prongs arranged to increase hit probability while ensuring that fish remained secured throughout the capture process. Torch technology determined success or failure of the entire operation. Medieval fishermen experimented with different materials to create torches that burned hot and bright while remaining waterproof enough to function during the inevitable splashing and humidity of nighttime fishing. Pine pitch, birch bark, and oil-soaked cloth created torches that could burn for hours. The hunting process required incredible skill and patience. Fishermen moved slowly through shallow water, holding torches high enough to illuminate underwater areas, while positioning spears for accurate strikes. The combination of balancing light, maintaining stealth, and executing precise spear throws demanded years of practice to master effectively. Boat-based torch spearing represented the advanced version of this technique. Medieval fishermen developed specialized boats designed for stability during spear fishing, with designated positions for torch holders and spear throwers. Successful teams could cover larger areas and access deeper waters where bigger fish congregated. Refraction presented the greatest technical challenge for torch spearing practitioners. Water bends light, making fish appear in different positions than their actual locations. Medieval fishermen had to learn compensation techniques, aiming below and slightly to one side of where fish appeared to ensure accurate strikes. Seasonal timing maximized torch spearing effectiveness. Medieval practitioners understood that certain fish species were more active during specific times of year, weather conditions, and lunar cycles. This knowledge allowed them to time their expeditions for maximum productivity rather than relying on random luck. Target species varied based on regional waters and seasonal availability. Salmon, trout, pike, and even eels could be taken using torch spearing techniques. Each species required slightly different approaches, spear modifications, and hunting strategies that experienced practitioners developed through extensive trial and error. Community cooperation enhanced individual success rates. Multiple fishermen working together could surround fish, drive them toward designated hunters, and coordinate strikes for maximum effectiveness. This teamwork transformed torch spearing from individual hunting into organized community food production. Legal restrictions eventually limited torch spearing in many regions. Medieval authorities recognized that the technique was so effective it could potentially deplete fish populations if used without regulation. Laws began restricting when, where, and how torch spearing could be practiced. Modern conservation efforts have largely banned torch spearing due to its effectiveness and potential for overfishing. However, the technique remains legal in some regions under strict regulations, and survival training programs still teach torch spearing as an emergency food procurement method. Willow basket traps. Medieval communities discovered that the most effective fishing gear grew directly from their own wetlands. Willow basket traps represented the perfect marriage of available materials and sophisticated engineering, creating fish-catching devices that could be manufactured entirely from resources found within walking distance of any village. The construction process began 3 years before a single fish was caught. Medieval trap makers cultivated willow beds specifically for fishing equipment, understanding that young willow shoots lack the strength and flexibility necessary for reliable trap construction. Only willow withies that had grown for at least 3 years possessed the proper balance of strength and bendability. Harvesting required precise timing and technique. Medieval craftsmen cut willow during late winter dormancy when sap levels were lowest, ensuring maximum durability and resistance to water damage. They selected chutes of specific diameters for different trap components, with thicker withies forming structural frameworks and thinner materials creating tight weaving patterns. Processing prepared raw willow for trap construction. Brown withies retain their bark for maximum strength and natural waterproofing. White withies had bark stripped away for flexibility. Buff withies were boiled with bark intact, then stripped, creating materials with intermediate properties. Medieval trap makers chose specific types based on intended use and performance requirements. Two-chamber design represented the height of medieval trap engineering sophistication. The large opening funnel guided fish into the main basket chamber, while a second internal chamber prevented escape once fish had entered. This double-trap system dramatically improved catch rates compared to simple single-chamber designs. Weaving techniques created traps that could withstand powerful river currents while maintaining precise mesh sizes. Medieval craftsmen developed specific weaving patterns that prevented small fish from escaping while allowing water to flow freely through the trap. The skill required to create these patterns was passed down through generations of specialist trap makers. Trap deployment required understanding of fish behavior and water dynamics. Medieval fishermen positioned basket traps in flowing rivers and tidal estuaries where fish naturally traveled, often creating temporary dams or guides to direct fish toward trap openings. Successful trap placement could determine the difference between feast and famine. Size specifications reflected practical transportation and handling constraints. 5-foot trap lengths represented the maximum size that individual fishermen could deploy, retrieve, and transport without assistance. This standardization allowed trap-making techniques to spread across different regions and fishing communities. Species-specific modifications optimized traps for different fishing targets. Eel traps used tighter weaving and different entry configurations than salmon traps. Trout traps required different positioning and handling than traps designed for bottom-feeding fish. Medieval communities developed specialized trap variants for their local fish populations. Maintenance schedules extended trap working life and ensured consistent performance. Medieval fishermen regularly inspected, repaired, and retreated their willow traps to prevent deterioration and maintain effectiveness. Proper maintenance could extend trap life for multiple fishing seasons, making the initial construction investment economically viable. Economic value created entire specialized industries around trap making and maintenance. Skilled trap makers became essential community members, often trading their services for food, shelter, and other necessities. The knowledge and skill required to make effective traps represented valuable intellectual property that communities carefully protected. Archaeological evidence reveals the widespread use of willow basket traps across medieval Europe. Trap fragments found at medieval sites indicate standardized construction techniques and suggest extensive trade networks for trap-making knowledge and materials. These discoveries confirm that basket trap fishing represented a major component of medieval food production systems. Longline tidal fishing. Medieval communities transformed the predictable rhythm of ocean tides into automated fishing systems that worked continuously without human supervision. The construction process began with massive rope-making operations that could take entire communities weeks to complete. Creating the main line required splicing together hundreds of shorter rope segments using hemp or flax cordage. Medieval fishermen learned specific knots and splicing techniques that prevented lines from breaking under the stress of strong currents and heavy fish loads. A single long line could stretch for miles, requiring enormous quantities of locally produced rope. The setup process began at low tide, when fishermen could wade into exposed areas to position anchor points. They drove wooden stakes deep into the seabed, or positioned heavy stone anchors at precise intervals, spacing them to create a grid pattern that covered maximum fishing area. Each anchor point had to be marked with floating indicators that could be seen during high tide. Hook attachment followed systematic patterns that medieval fishermen developed through generations of experimentation. Hooks were tied directly to the main line using specific spacing, typically every 3 to 6 feet, depending on target fish species and local conditions. Each hook required individual baiting, creating hours of preparation work before lines could be deployed. Bait preparation consumed enormous amounts of time and resources. Medieval communities dedicated groups of people to collecting shellfish, digging worms, catching small fish, and preparing other baits needed for hundreds of hooks. Bait had to be fresh enough to attract fish, but secure enough to stay attached through tidal cycles. Deployment timing required precise coordination with tidal schedules. Fishermen had narrow windows during low tide to set lines, attach final anchor points, and ensure proper positioning before waters rose. Missing these timing windows meant losing entire setup efforts and waiting for the next tidal cycle. Retrieval operations began at the following low tide, typically 12 hours later. Medieval fishermen worked systematically along their long lines, removing caught fish, checking hook conditions, and rebaiting hooks for the next cycle. Fish had to be processed immediately to prevent spoilage during the walk back to shore. Line maintenance represented ongoing work that determined longline fishing success rates. Medieval fishermen constantly repaired damaged sections, replaced broken hooks, reinforced anchor points, and adjusted line positioning based on seasonal changes in fish behavior and water conditions. Multiple line management allowed experienced practitioners to operate dozens of separate long lines simultaneously. Each line targeted different areas, depths, and fish species, creating diversified fishing operations that reduced risk and maximized total food production for their communities. Plant stunning. Medieval communities discovered they could weaponize the natural world itself by grinding specific plants into fish-stunning agents that transformed entire river systems into massive collection areas. The preparation process began with plant identification and cultivation that required specialized botanical knowledge passed down through generations. Root collection started during specific seasons when active compounds reached peak concentrations. Medieval practitioners learned that barbasco roots contained maximum stunning power when harvested during dry seasons, while other plants required different timing. They would carefully dig roots without killing parent plants, ensuring sustainable harvesting for future seasons. Processing techniques transformed raw plant materials into effective stunning agents through systematic preparation methods. Medieval fishermen crushed fresh roots using wooden mallets and stone grinding surfaces, breaking down plant fibers to release concentrated chemical compounds. The grinding process could take hours of intensive physical labor to prepare enough material for large-scale stunning operations. Paste preparation involved mixing ground plant materials with specific amounts of water to create thick, sticky pastes that would disperse properly in flowing water. Medieval practitioners learned exact water-to-plant ratios through trial and error, understanding that too much water diluted effectiveness, while too little prevented proper distribution. Stream preparation required coordinating community work teams to modify water flow before stunning operations began. Medieval fishermen built temporary dams using stones, logs, and mud to slow water movement in target areas. These modifications concentrated stunning agents and prevented them from being washed away before affecting fish populations. Application methods involve strategic placement of prepared plant materials upstream from target fishing areas. Medieval teams would position baskets filled with plant paste at specific intervals across stream width, ensuring even distribution as currents carried stunning agents downstream toward waiting fish populations. Timing coordination was crucial for successful stunning operations. Medieval practitioners learned to introduce plant materials during peak fish activity periods, typically during spawning migrations or seasonal feeding times when target fish species concentrated in predictable locations within river systems. Collection techniques had to match the dramatic productivity of plant stunning operations. When applications worked effectively, hundreds of stunned fish would surface simultaneously across large river areas. Medieval communities organized coordinated collection efforts using boats, hand nets, woven baskets, and large groups of people working together to gather floating fish before they recovered. Dosage control prevented permanent harm to fish populations while ensuring effective stunning results. Medieval practitioners developed techniques for judging proper plant quantities based on water volume, current speed, and target fish species. Too little stunning agent produced poor results, while excessive amounts could kill fish permanently. Recovery monitoring ensured sustainable fishing practices that preserved fish populations for future harvesting. Medieval communities learned that properly stunned fish recovered completely within hours when washed into untainted water, allowing fish populations to maintain healthy numbers despite regular stunning operations. Safety protocols protected human health during stunning operations and fish consumption. Although stunned fish remained perfectly safe for human consumption, medieval practitioners learned to avoid direct contact with concentrated plant preparations that could cause skin irritation or other health problems during preparation and application phases. These 5 medieval fishing techniques reveal the remarkable ingenuity of communities facing life or death challenges with nothing but natural materials and human creativity. From massive weir installations that could trap thousands of fish per tide to plant-based, stunning operations that could harvest entire river systems, medieval fishermen developed solutions that modern technology still struggles to match. What makes these techniques truly genius isn't just their effectiveness. It's how they solved complex engineering problems using only resources that communities could produce and control themselves. No supply chains, no industrial manufacturing, no external dependencies, just deep understanding of natural systems and generations of accumulated wisdom. The scale of these operations supported entire civilizations. Medieval fishing provided the protein foundation that enabled cities to grow and complex societies to develop. These weren't survival techniques. They were sophisticated food production systems that could feed thousands year-round. Modern fishing has gained convenience but lost much of the sustainability and resource efficiency that characterized medieval techniques. These methods worked with natural systems rather than against them, often increasing fish populations through controlled harvesting. The knowledge required to implement these techniques represented valuable intellectual property that communities carefully guarded. Master fishermen were respected community members whose expertise could determine survival during difficult times. These forgotten techniques offer modern communities valuable lessons about resource efficiency, sustainability, and local food production. As global supply chains become increasingly fragile, medieval fishing wisdom provides tested alternatives that worked for centuries. If you found these forgotten fishing techniques fascinating, there's an entire world of medieval survival wisdom waiting to be rediscovered. Subscribe to explore more ingenious solutions that sustained our ancestors.